to your souls. Learning leads to living. Seeking leads to submitting. Submitting leads to following. That's what happens. Seek the Lord because it's the only way you can live like God. You see, that's the ultimate goal. You seek the Lord, yes, and when you find him, learn him. Take my yoke and learn of me. Become his disciple. Follow him so you can then live like him. In fact, that's the expectation. That God's children will bear the family resemblance. They'll look like him. In fact, that's what we're called. You read John chapter 8, 39 to 44, there's talks of fathers in that passage of scripture. The Jews say, we have Abraham to our father. Jesus responds, if Abraham were your father, you'd do the works of Abraham. You see, that's what that means. If he's your father, be like him. If he's your father, live like him. Jesus says, my father is in heaven. If you knew him, you'd love me. I'm like him. That's what Jesus says. And then he finally says, but you're like your father, the devil. The lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning. You see what happens with children is the expectation of scripture is when you learn God and you follow him and you become a child, you'll act just like him. Matthew 5 verses 43 to 48. How do we love? Like God. He allows his sun to rise on the just and the unjust. He gives good to those who are wicked. He loves his enemies. Well, you be perfect just as your father is perfect. How are we to forgive? Like God, Ephesians 4:32, be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. The primary function to God in that connection is to seek the Lord. Well, what's the primary function to you? Save yourself. You seek God, you save yourself. In fact, your soul is your most precious commodity. And scripture talks about you losing it potentially and saving it potentially. Well, that's the way it works. You're the only one who can. What's the exhortation in scripture? Seek God. Yes, yes, yes. What's the exhortation for you? Save yourself. Matthew 16:26, Jesus asked, what does a man profit if he gained the whole world? And you know the rest, don't you? Nobody else's. Lose nobody else's. Whose soul can you lose? Yours. Who owns it? You. Who's in possession of it? You. Who's connected to God with it? You. What's the responsibility? Acts chapter 2, the apostles preached Jesus. Acts 2:22 to 24. That God raised him from the dead. You killed him. God raised him. That God has now exalted him. They say in Acts chapter 2 and verse 36, therefore let all the house of Israel know assuredly that God had made that same Jesus whom you have crucified